Hi there, welcome to this last segment. You're on the last stretch. Well done. We're nearly there. Then we'll have a lot more time for flexibility for the rest of the summer. So, as you finish this process of setting together a proposal, you'll now have a structure in mind, and now is a good time to also teach you a further skill, which is how to review other people's handling of this structure and presentation of a study. So objectives are to explore how to critique each other's research and how to draft a critical review of a journal article, answer all questions relating to the art of the critical review, and explore the expectations and aims of assignment 9. Again, it's not to overload you. I've taught this course quite a lot of times, and we've included this because a lot of the instructors that will follow in the masters will expect that you've learned to do this. So it's a good building block to do this in 6110 so that you are feeling comfortable, and then when you achieve it again, when you're tackling it again, you feel comfortable and at ease. There's two reasons for this. For the reason why it's included so often in courses. The first one is the real world, because it's the essence of the peer review, which is the cornerstone of academia. So it's very experiential in preparing for the real world. The second is that it's a convenient academic exercise because it ensures that you've read something, that you understand it, and you're able to assess it critically. So you can see why instructors like it, and it's a very frequent sort of assessment. So it's important that you get comfortable with it. And this is going to be really formative. You can bounce back and forth as many times as you want before you submit the final. Yeah, see it as the learning process. Don't see it as just the assessment part. So we still have a few media sources. Again, it's only if you at this stage, if you haven't got enough, then it's maybe still time to engage with some of these before you submit your assignment 2. Again, it's a practice run. So trying it out and getting interaction from your peers. And I'm going to jump in now through the weekend as well. Will be a good feedback to you copy pasting and editing into the assignment to your final version. I've given you lots of different sort of routes here from different universities. Again, just like the lit, with the lit review, they are also with the structure of the proposal. They are just as there was flexibility about the structure of the proposal. There's going to be flexibility about how to do a critical review. You're going to see some differences in the way people put arguments forward. So it's my duty to give you lots of samples and lots of insight into the various ways that academics and profs are looking at this. But in essence, I think try and demystify the process. And this is why it fits really well here, because now you have a clear idea of the structure of your proposal. So the structure of review can mimic the structure of your expectations with regards to a proposal. And so I've repeated again the sort of proposal stages, and I've added, because obviously the proposal stops at data collection. We don't do the data collection. So if you, I've given here the full sort of structure of the study. So you would be adding two parts. So again, context, intro, objectives, and questions, which can be all in one question or can be separated, up to you. The lit review, the theory, but you can ignore that at the moment because you've not been exposed to theory. The methodology, and that consists of three things: choice of methodology, data collection process, and data analysis process. It may look squished in the same section, but it's actually going to be 3 stages always. Then the findings, that's what you're adding. Findings, if you were to do the study, you would have a section there that would actually explain what your data analysis has been, and then the outcomes. Outcomes is because in research we don't like having the word conclusion. As you've seen, it's never a finite process. You're putting one step, you're taking the field one step ahead. Other people will pick that up and go further. So the word conclusion defeats the purpose. It's never a conclusion, it's never finite. It's actually about moving forward. So the word outcomes as a heading is much more convenient for educational research and research generally, because it allows the fact that this is what I've landed with, this is the potential for further research, or this is what people might do with it. So in terms of addressing your critical review, as you begin, and because you're a young scholar, I would feel very comfortable following the headings just literally as a checklist as you're doing a critical review. So you can follow exactly the same list and actually have these as subheadings and actually assess the appropriateness or the quality or the effectiveness of each section. So in the context, first of all, you would cite it. So I've said you would cite the article APA style at the top. It's convenient because it enables you to avoid having to reintroduce it in the text and to keep mentioning the authors in a sort of in-text citation. There is no confusion here. You're only talking about one article. Therefore, there's no point having a bibliography. Instead, we put at the top, and then we can just go straight in saying this paper, these authors, or this author, and you don't need to burden your text with referencing either again. In the first section of your review, what I would just add here is you would probably have a very short summary. And I mean very short, a paragraph that just summarizes what the article is about in a very factual way, descriptive. At this point, you're not being, assessing it, but that's why it's very short, because that's not the aim of the paper. But your reader has essentially not read it. You're reviewing this to tell someone whether it's worth reading. So it's normal that you take a paragraph to explain what the paper actually does. And then you begin the review, and then you can follow your structure. So the first one it's a section where you assume you're going to see the context explained, the intro to the paper, the objectives, and the question that is designed. So how do you assess that? You don't necessarily assess it, but you make it very clear to your reader. So it could be included in the first section in a summary, or you can make a separate section saying the objectives of this paper is to do that. And this is the research questions that they've set up. Sometimes you can already be a little critical because the research designs, the way the research is stated, just as we've given you feedback in section info assignment 3, you may already have issues with the way the question has been formatted. And you may already have a critical sort of assessment that's saying, this is not the best design for that question. There would have been a different design. But if you have nothing to assess, at least you would explain this is what the article sets out to do. It's important because when you get back to the end, you will say it has reached or it hasn't reached that objective. Lit review, how do you assess it? I know it's hard, you're just learning to do it, but I'll give you 3 key elements. The scope. Often I'm just showing you start wide and you narrow down. Often it doesn't start wide enough. So sometimes the writer will jump straight into the gap and doesn't actually take the time to show the scope, the full scope of the problem or the potential scope of the problem. So if the scope is missing, you're going to be critical about that. The second one is up to date. I've said to you, an article should really not be citing things that are more than 10 years old because there's no point, because we are looking at a snapshot. So whatever has been done in the last 10 years presumably is built on what's been done before that. So you don't need to mention what's been done before that. So definitely the how up to date the lit review is going to be very important. And then the third one would be the richness, right? The scope might be there, but there might be significant things that have been missed. So this, at your level, it's difficult to assess. It's something that we not necessarily presume that you can do at this stage. But as your knowledge of the field gets better, there might be a way that, times when you look at the scope, you say the scope is there and it was done nicely, but there's an entire section that's been missing. So you would talk about the richness or the fact that it's not rich enough, lack of richness. Okay. Theory. You can ignore it for the moment, but obviously when you get to it and once you have that introduction to theory, if there's a theory section or if the theory section is implicit and lies in the lit review and the methodology, you could comment on the appropriateness of the theory to the phenomena. It's not a question of being right or wrong or being proven or disproved. It's the theory, the authors make subjective theoretical choices, and sometimes you can make an assessment and says that theory seems to fit well, or sometimes you can say, well, I'm not quite sure why that author chose that theory because I can think of others. But that's a very advanced skill that you'll do later on when you develop that skill further. Methodology is quite a chunky section. So you have 3 elements and you would assess them in turn. So is the choice of methodology right? You can do that because you've been exposed to a fair degree of methodologies. You can start saying, well, I don't necessarily understand why they've chosen this methodology. Or sometimes you'll say, I can see that there would have been a better choice of methodology. Or sometimes you're going to say, choice of methodology is very appropriate, and you explain why. Data collection process. So here we're talking about the tools and the way it's been set up, maybe the timeline. You're criticizing really the practical details of the data collection as it's been explained. Sometimes there won't be enough participants. Sometimes they are too few, too many. They come from two similar profiles. There's also diversity in the contributions. Depending on what your methodology is, you're going to be able to criticize the data collection setup. And then the data analysis. Now that's stuff for you guys too. but sometimes it will jump at you that sometimes the data analysis is not finished. I said to you, sometimes it's work in progress, but it's not been finished, particularly when it's qualitative and there's a lot of it. Often you'll see it's a section when the author starts having huge amounts of transcripts in there. They're telling you what the participants have said, but that's not data analysis. That's just like landing you in the middle of the data and letting you get on with it. So I think quickly you're going to be able to make certain judgments there. Then you get to the findings. So the findings would be, where you would say, is it complete? Is it helpful? Is it addressing? That's where you go back to the objectives, right? Has it addressed the objectives? Has it met its own objectives? Has it been efficient by its own standards? And then you get to the outcomes. And that usually is easy for students because here really you're looking at the relevance of what's been found for the field. So sometimes you're going to be able to say, this is really useful. This actually gives the field a huge step forward. Sometimes you can say, it's a bit disappointing. Not that much has been drawn from the study. It doesn't really make any difference for most of us. Sometimes this is when there's been bad research. Why you say there's outcomes, but they don't matter to anyone. There's no stakeholders who were never taken into consideration. So no one really cares about this. This is where you can make that assessment. Now, as we finish, there's a few notes there. There's a section that you would add. So this is pretty much you follow the structure itself, the intended structure, or the expectations with regards to the structure. But there's a section you can add. You can also have a section that details the writing. So the quality of the writing, the accessibility of the writing, how it avoids jargon and uses layperson terms. And that is often a point on which you can criticize academics because often it does not. The clarity, things like this. So that's usual to have a paragraph in a critical review that is separate from the expectations of content, but now it talks about form. And you can put that towards the end. And then it's usual to follow that checklist, regardless of if you're not feeling sort of confidence to sort of swirl it around. As you get more confident with style and elegance, you will see that you can do exactly the same, and the sections don't necessarily have to be in the right order. It's then the fluidity of your review that carries the thing. But as you begin, there's nothing wrong with sticking to that. But at the end, it's still very important that if you have a very negative review, you finish with something very positive. So if your review has been great, then there's no problem. You can finish in that order. But if your review has been very negative, there is always a saving grace, probably something that it did do, right? Even if it didn't do it well. So you would normally drag that down to try and finish with something positive. And the reason for that is that it's the same as a review of double review of journal articles. You are reviewing someone sometimes very openly because sometimes these things are transparent and the author sees them. You are reviewing someone who's a colleague, someone you might be sitting next to at a conference, someone who may in turn review your work. So it is civil to present this in the most collegiate of tone that you can have. And it's very important that you do that. So and that's, I find, is one of the most difficult things to do when you are doing this review. So you're going to have to make sure that you are collegiate, so that you are sugarcoating a little bit, even when you're wording harsh criticism. You are doing it in a way that is positive. I think we've done everything else. The first person is not acceptable in a critical review. You can give a little bit insight into your opinion, but it would be at the very end and very in a couple of sentences. It's really not relevant to the rest of the body. You're supposed to have that supposed objectivity, although again you're very present, but supposedly you are on the face of it sort of objective. So I've given you Blaze, an article on which to try. You can try this single. You can try this. Sorry, my neighbor is hoovering now. You can try this as a group. It makes no difference, but trying it is a good thing to do. Blaze, I'm going to give you a hint. It's a not very well written article. So the art is going to be to say negative things, and they should be jumping at you. They're fairly easy to spot, and to say it in a positive way. So it's a good practice. I've run this with classes several times. The classes tend to love it because really they don't have to look hard. There's a lot of things to say, and the art is saying it in a positive way, not saying it in a harsh way. It's still a colleague. You have to basically shoot it down, but shoot it down in a constructive way, and always maintaining the tone. So, turns of phrase like the reader would have expected, might have expected, but this it does not seem to be included. Things like this, rather than say there is no this, there is no that, right? You're gonna have to really wrap around the language so it's not negative and it is collegiate. And that's it. You've got a few references, which I will create links to, and I will put that in your readings during the weekend and begin next week, so that you can run with it when you come back to your assessments and use them as references if you wish. So that's it for now. And before the Hoover noise creates havoc, I will stop for now and post this, and I will see you at 4:30. Okay? Have a good afternoon.